Hello everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an in-depth sniff review of the LAFCO New York Forest Oakmoss Absolute Candle. But first, if you are new to Touch the Fire Twice, welcome. My mission here is to share my love and passion for fine home fragrance as an enthusiast, an educator, a reviewer, to inspire you to increase your own fragrance knowledge and understanding, ultimately enhancing the scent memories that you create. If you want to learn more about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, you can check out my website at TouchTheFireTwice.com. But for now, let's dig into this candle. So I'm super excited to be doing this review today, specifically around an absolute-based candle, which we'll talk a bit about what is an absolute versus your traditional essential oil and all the good technical stuff when it comes to that. One of the reasons why I'm so excited to do this is, scent transports us. It makes us think of a time, a place, a space and time. And the Oakmoss Absolute that's in this is literally sourced from forests in the Balkans in southeastern Europe. So you're quite literally smelling the true to life, actual organic fragrance molecules that grew on a tree in a forest around the world, for me, around the world, when you light this candle and smell it. And for me, fragrance is so magical for many reasons, one of which is because, I often, throughout my life, think about the passage of time and how we relate to time and what is time even in the past and the present and the now and being mindful. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Edie Beale of Grey Gardens fame. And she says, "It's very difficult to keep the line between the past and the present." Do you know what I mean? It's awfully difficult. And I find that our scent memories are tied to people or places or emotions or events or time periods in our lives. And small moments that when you take a whiff of a fragrance, to me, it's the closest thing to time travel because you're immediately thrust back into that moment in your mind's eye. And so getting to smell a candle that transports you to the Balkans is really just magical for me, and really just, for me, connects back to why I have such passion for fragrance. So let's talk about LAFCO. You've likely seen some of my past videos I've done on their candles. I did a review on Marine, Terracotta, Jungle Bloom, Paradiso Fig, a brand introduction with their Discovery Trio. Really a big fan of the fine fragrances that they build, the quality, the vessels, just across the board. It's a really elevated fine fragrance experience. And their Absolute collection is new over the past year or so, and really it is considered to be the highest quality, true to nature fragrances because they use fragrance absolutes, which are different than your traditional essential oils. Absolutes are more concentrated. They're produced through a solvent extraction versus your more traditional distillation or boiling like your traditional essential oils. And that results in a complex and really true to nature element. Before I dig into the notes and what this is about, I want to teach a little bit more about what a fragrance absolute is. So I'm referencing this wonderful book that I'm actually reading right now, Essence and Alchemy, A Natural History of Perfume by Mandy Oftel. And in it, she says, regarding concretes and absolutes, you can read along with me here, by removing waxes and other solids from a concrete, they can be rendered into an absolute, a highly concentrated liquid essence that is entirely alcohol soluble. I've sampled tarragon, nutmeg, fir, ginger, and black and white spruce absolutes, and they are some of the most exquisite and complicated odors I've ever smelled. Absolutes are floral essences at their truest and most concentrated. They're much more lasting than essential oils and have an intensity and fineness to their aroma that are unequaled. Naturally, they are the most expensive perfumery ingredients. So for a fine fragrance company to release a candle using not just natural essential oils versus some synthetics or things like that, but using an absolute really brings the truest, most evocative, and for me, awe-inspiring fragrance that you could come across. So that's what we're going to be looking into here. So let me show you first the candle, do this unboxing here, and then we will talk about obviously the scent. This collection is their Absolute collection. Currently there are 7 fragrances in this collection. They have Orange Blossom, Lavender Flower, Clary Sage, Labdanum, which is a new release, Rose de Mai, Forest Oakmoss, and Black Pepper Balsam. I also do have Black Pepper Balsam. I will be likely doing a review on that later in the winter because it is a beautiful midwinter scent for me in my mind. These are all very much year-round, but this one also then leans a bit fall for me because of the forest fragrance that we're gonna get out of this. But let's take a moment to look at the beauty, truly the art of this vessel. So this is their 15.5 ounce single wick candle size. They use primarily soy wax with a bit of paraffin to help increase the projection of the fragrance molecules into the air and into your nose. And for the Absolute collection, which is their most premier line, they partnered with the oldest family-owned glass maker in the Czech Republic, in Bohemia. And these are hand-blown, as all their vessels are, but truly elevated works of art where they have the glass, and then these are all individual pieces, little pellets of glass that are placed on it as the artisan is blowing and forming the glass. So each one is unique, the beautiful metallic edge there to it. And they have some videos on the process actually in the artisan factory, if you check out their website, where you can see the process, but just truly gorgeous. And when it's lit, the way that it just, the fractals of light come through it, it's really just so pretty. Now, when it comes to this forest Oakmoss, they describe it as, our Oakmoss Absolute fragrance has this distinctive mossy intensity at its core, sweetened with a drizzle of cognac. Violet leaf blossoms, warm amber, and incense envelop, creating a majestic verdant scent experience. Now, what do I get out of this? First impressions is it very much is, as they say, forest floor. The three primary notes in this, though they have a full top, middle, bottom that we're going to dig into together, opoponax, Oakmoss Absolute, so that's your Absolute, and vetiver, which I think a lot of folks are familiar with. Vetiver, maybe not so much the opoponax or Oakmoss. But it is forest floor, but not in a dirty, dank way that sometimes forest fragrances are expressed. To me, it is subtle, it's enchanting, it's earthy, but it's sweetly earthy. It's alluring, it's unique. It's almost, for me, it conjures this image of a magical forest where you might find gnomes and fairies flitting about, because it doesn't smell traditional forest in a sense. It really is cool and overcast. A fresh forest, certainly damp and green, but not overly herbal or a bitter green. There's a sweetness, almost like an animalic muskiness to it, on top of the earthiness. What it is not for me is, it is not your heavy woods, it is not smoky, it is not particularly spicy, it is not overly resinous, which are all notes and descriptors that I would often use for forest floor fragrances. When I think of maybe a nest charcoal woods, there's a lot of a heavy wood to it, which I love. Don't get me wrong, I love that fragrance, but this is a completely 180 expression of a forest or a forest floor with the forest Oakmoss blend. And when it comes specifically to that Absolute, so the Absolute oil that is used is the Oakmoss, the primary scent they're going after here. They then describe that as, Oakmoss Absolute is derived from the rich bark of oak trees found deep in the Balkan forests. Echoes of the damp forest floor are reflected in the earthy, mossy, woody notes. And the photos I've been displaying here are all taken from the Central Balkan National Park and Biosphere Reserve, the national forest in Bulgaria. So literally the oak moss you're seeing on these trees, this is where it transports you, and literally what you're smelling in the Oakmoss Absolute. Again, to me, it is just, it's the science of it is magical, and it is that blend of science and art and magic that I just love with fine fragrance. That said, let's dig into the notes, because there are a full array of top, middle, bottom notes within this candle. So first up, we have the top notes of opoponax and cognac, which you may not expect to see cognac unless you've got a little flask as you're walking through the forest. So opoponax is a gum resin from the bark of a tree, typically grown in Somalia, and it is commonly known as sweet myrrh. And opoponax is perhaps more common than a lot of us know in fine fragrance. You've likely smelled it, though you maybe have never heard of it before. The notes it is known for are oak, vanilla, kind of a bit of honey, a little bit powdery leather perhaps. It's often used in amber-based perfumes, warm, sweet, velvety, soft, and sensual. This candle is on the border of sensual. To me, it's not so much the romantic, alluring bedroom sensual, though it wouldn't be out of place lit in the bedroom. It is more the enchanting, alluring outdoor forest that I'm getting from this versus so much sensual. like a velvety fruit kind of sensual. It's not in that category for me. And the cognac brings you a bit of that sweetness. So cognac is a type of brandy distilled from white grapes in France and aged in French oak barrels. So when you think of an aged alcohol in oak barrels, it's going to impart those vanilla, candied fruit notes, maybe a little bit of raisin, almost dried apricot. A little boozy, a little tobacco, sweetly floral. But the cognac is that sweetness that you get on top of here that is not that it is different than a sweetness from, say a wood resin. Digging into the heart of the fragrance, the middle notes here, of course, we have that Oakmoss Absolute. Oakmoss is a tightly curled plant. It's a lichen that grows primarily on oak trees in the forests where it is sourced from in Bulgaria and Macedonia. Now the smell of Oakmoss, earthy, woody, sensual with hints of musk and amber. There's a lot of muskiness and amber notes as we get deeper into this, but I'll caution you to say if you don't like amber and musk, doesn't mean you won't like this, because this doesn't lean traditional heavy. Think sort of the musks and ambers that you may be used to from your traditional perfumes. This is a fresh, cool expression of some of those notes, in my opinion. But your oak moss can be earthy and woodsy. If you're walking through that wet forest, damp, mossy trunks, the root branches along the way, perhaps a little babbling brook, those cool stones that also have some moss on them. Could be a bit of a crisp bark, a little bit of a leathery undertone, subtly giving those musky amber type notes. Can be green and a slight brightness to it. It really is paradoxical because it can hold these opposing scents perfectly balanced within the one note. The other two middle notes, labdanum. And labdanum is a sticky, sweet brown resin extracted from the leaves and stems of the cistus plant, also known as the rock rose bush from Iran. When it turns from this rose bush into this sticky, dark, heavy resin, it really mimics ambergris, the French pronunciation ambre-gris. That is, I don't speak French. That's probably not the ideal pronunciation, but ambre-gris. And so that is, of course, the byproduct of the sperm whale's digestive system after eating the hard beaks of squid. Strange, but that is the fine world of perfumery over the centuries. And so that is a byproduct. It washes up, it ages, it goes from weird and fecal and gross to this beautiful, the amber scent that we know that is mimicked in synthetics is this musky, warm, golden, deep, sensual scent. And labdanum is a common substitute for ambergris. Leathery, a honey-like sweetness, can be fruit like a deep plum, woody, animalic, a dry musk, leathery. The whole spectrum of amber, because it is so complex, lives within labdanum. And then violet leaf. So we are remaining a forest. It is a green, verdant experience. And so violet leaf will help us with that. So they don't go all the way to say a galbanum or something that's a really, in my mind, bitter, herbaceous green note. They go with the violet leaf. It smells quite different than the flower. It can be a touch metallic. They say super cooling green, fresh, almost like newly mown grass, often used in watery fragrances. It's not the powdery floral. It is that fresh green, almost metallic. And then we travel to our base notes. You've got vetiver, sandalwood, and incense. So some heavy hitters here. So vetiver is a grass native to India. It's actually related to lemongrass and citronella, and its roots are aged in oil that's extracted from the roots. Earthy, damp, woody, hints of leather, nutty, kind of smoky, without being your mesquite smoke, but a bit of a smoky edge to it, while still being somewhat fresh. You see, a lot of these notes have these opposing, but yet balanced ends of the spectrum. So it's going to be woody and almost smoky, but still have a fresh earthiness to it, which is fascinating. Some folks have described it as uncut grass or hay on a warm day, and others will take it to saying it is a sack of damp potatoes from a shed. So use your mind's eye to dig into that one, but it is a little bit dirty, but yet still remains fresh. And then sandalwood. We all also know sandalwood. It is known for that creamy, woody sweetness. Warm, smooth, creamy, sweet, sophisticated, woody, earthy, soft. Your traditional sandalwood. I don't get a lot of it in here, but it is bringing depth to some of those more alive green notes that I'm getting from, say, the violet leaf and the oak moss. And then finally, incense. Now, incense is a tough one because incense can be frankincense, specifically in fragrance, or incense can really be many different range of incense-like aromas that can lean from woody to floral to spice to resin. So I just get a fine little bit of, whether it's, what you think of as incense, more sort of the traditional incense, or even a frankincense. This one is resinous, not intense, not smoky, not spicy, really, but there is a background base of that woody, somewhat resinous incense. And so you put it all together and it's just this intoxicating, enchanting, again, I've said magical probably 7 times in this video, but that's what I get from this. And when you just have these speckles of glass here, it really just truly transports you to the forest, but literally bringing the forest to you, in this case with the Oakmoss Absolute. Talking about the candle's performance, very important. So again, this is a 15.5 ounce single wick candle. It's a decently wide diameter. This is about as far as you'd want to go for a single wick. After this, you'd like to see a 2 or 3 wick in something larger. And they use a primarily soy wax blend, which is denser and takes longer to pull out, burns slower, literally a heavier molecule with soy versus, say, a paraffin or something like that that is historically used in candle making. And so there's a little bit of paraffin to help bring the fragrance out, to lift it up. I will say, as is sometimes the case with these candles of this diameter, the 15.5 ounce specifically, it does take some time to pull out because soy is slower burning. And I do often use a foil wrap on the first burn or two with these size of candles, just to ensure that you do get that full pull across. It can take 2, 3, 4 hours to get that full pull, but you definitely want to get that going. And typically you do that once or twice, the candle starts to get that sort of memory, and subsequent burns typically pull out a bit more quickly and more consistently on their own. But you can see here from the video, beautiful burn, clean, consistent burn. And when you first sniff it, you think, oh, it's subtle, it's a bit light, but boy, oh boy, once this is throwing, it is very intense, but it is not overwhelming. There's a healthy projection. When I burned it in the study here, it went out into the loft and just traveled and stuck around for a little bit. After I blew it out, it was still there for a good hour or two. And just that magical forest, not even necessarily forest floor, it gives me gnomes and fairies throughout the forest because it is so enchanting with that oak moss and the little bit of sweetness, that animalic, that cool, clean expression of an amber for me. So big fan of that. If you are interested, I highly recommend giving them a shot. They are not inexpensive because, as Mandy Aftel's book mentioned, some of the most expensive oils are absolutes. The retail on the Absolute collection is $95, but there are discounts occasionally if you're new to the LAFCO website, or if you can find boutiques. A lot of boutiques will have fall specials. Maybe you can get 15, 20, 25% off, depending the time of year. But really, whether this is your everyday burn or your once a year treat for yourself, or once a quarter, whatever it might be, it really is for those who love the craftsmanship, the art, not just of fine fragrance, but of the entire experience when it comes to the art of the vessel. Beautiful cocktail glass, or whatever you want to repurpose it as when it's done, but it is one of those certainly not one to throw out when the wax is used up. But really happy with this. Would love to hear if any of you have purchased these, or just the idea of absolutes. I find it, when it comes to transporting us across space or time, that's what fragrance does for me. I imagine that's what it does for you. If you've made it this long in the video, you're clearly a fragrance enthusiast and fan the way that I am. But I'm just so grateful for brands like LAFCO that make these blends and products that really respect the craftsmanship behind fine fragrance, and not just mass marketing the synthetics, which, don't get me wrong, again, look in my closet. I've got tons of candles of all brands of $5 to $95. But when you have one like this, it really is something extra special and something really exciting to explore. So that is it for this video. Welcome any questions, thoughts, comments on this blend or any of LAFCO's collection. Let me know what you think, and until next time, take care.